$400 million. That's the all-in cost of the asset we're putting on the books today. And here is the first thing your wealth manager will not tell you. You will see it exactly once. Fully assembled in a clean room under fluorescent light, surrounded by people in bunny suits who are about to bolt it to the top of a controlled explosion and send it somewhere you can never follow. After that, no touching it, no visiting it, no inspecting it, repairing it, or, in any meaningful accounting sense, finding it. Welcome to finishing school. Today's lesson, the satellite. Now, everyone at your level already owns a yacht. A yacht, whatever its faults, is a liability you can at least walk onto. You can fire the captain. You can sell it to a slightly more desperate billionaire at 60 cents on the dollar. A satellite offers none of that. And this is precisely why it is the superior status object. A yacht says you have money. A satellite says you have money you have no intention of ever seeing again. So let's capitalize the asset properly. Line by line. The way your future estate's auditor will. Start with the hardware. A geostationary communications satellite is roughly the size of a school bus, weighs up to 7 tons, and takes 3 to 5 years to design and build. Which means you are committing the money today for an asset you cannot use until the back half of a presidential term. Build cost lands somewhere between $150 and $500 million, depending on how many transponders you want and how much you enjoy the phrase digital beamforming payload. For our purposes, a serious, full-capability bird, call the spacecraft itself, $250 to $300 million. That's before it has left the building. That's before it has done anything at all except pass a vibration test and bill you for the privilege. Then you have to get it up there. 22,236 miles up there, to be precise. The one specific altitude where it can hover over a fixed point on Earth and pretend to be standing still. Launch runs you roughly another $100 million, and it buys you about 8 minutes of the most expensive suspense in the private sector. Because here's the structural problem with the launch line item. It is binary. The rocket works, or your $400 million asset becomes a press release about an anomaly during ascent. There is no partial credit. There is no 50% satellite. Which brings us, naturally, to the part nobody puts in the brochure: insurance. You will insure the launch and the first year on orbit, and you will pay somewhere between 5 and 20% of the asset's value for the privilege. On a $400 million satellite, that is not a rounding error. That is a down payment on a second satellite that you are handing to an underwriter in London who has read the actuarial tables and would very much like you to stop calling. And the underwriters are nervous because the recent past has been unkind. One bad year saw the space insurance market pay out nearly $1 billion in claims against barely $500 million in premiums. A single satellite's antenna failed to unfold correctly and generated a claim north of $700 million. Another lost its power system and quietly cost its insurers $348 million. So premiums went up. Several insurers simply left the building, and the cost of protecting your asset rose precisely because assets like yours keep failing in ways no one can fix from the ground. You are not buying peace of mind. You are buying a small, recurring reminder that everyone who does the math for a living is afraid of this purchase. Now the asset is on orbit. Now we can finally do the thing this channel exists to do. We depreciate it. 15 years of useful life, $400 million of cost. Straight line method, because nothing about this asset's decline is interesting enough to justify a fancier one. That is $26.7 million a year of value evaporating on schedule. $73,000 a day, $3,000 an hour, roughly $50 a minute, every minute, including the minutes you are asleep, the minutes you are at dinner, and the minutes you are watching this video, during which your satellite has silently shed the price of a decent used car, and you have done absolutely nothing to deserve it. It depreciates in a perfectly straight line, into the sun. Here's the detail that breaks people. That satellite looks like it's parked. From the ground it never moves. That's the entire point of geostationary orbit. But it is in fact tearing through space at just over 3 kilometers a second, nearly 7,000 miles an hour. It only appears still because it is running exactly as fast as the planet is spinning, forever, just to stay in one place. Which, if you've ever managed money, you will recognize as a familiar feeling. And it is not alone up there. The geostationary belt is a narrow, finite, weirdly crowded strip of real estate, sprinkled with decades of derelict satellites and spent rocket stages, including hardware launched before some of you were born, drifting uncontrolled through the exact lane your $400 million now occupies. You cannot move out of the neighborhood. There is only one neighborhood. And now, the part that I, personally, find the most beautiful. You'd assume a satellite dies when the electronics fail. It doesn't. The electronics will often outlast everything. What actually kills it is fuel. To stay in its assigned slot, the satellite has to nudge itself back into position constantly. Station keeping, it's called. And it does that by burning a finite tank of propellant. When the tank runs dry, the asset can no longer hold its spot, and it is, functionally, dead. Fully operational. Perfectly good. Out of gas. So this $400 million instrument of advanced civilization has the same fundamental failure mode as a rental scooter. The useful life you depreciate it against? It was never about the technology. It was always a fuel gauge, dressed up in a 15-year schedule. So we reach disposal, the line item where this asset reveals its true character. You cannot bring it home. Bringing it down from that altitude would cost more energy than launching it did. Instead, you spend its final drops of fuel boosting it 300 kilometers higher into what the industry calls, and I am not making this up, the graveyard orbit. A parking spot for the dead above the parking spot for the living. This maneuver requires you to reserve roughly 3 months' worth of station-keeping fuel for the funeral. Fuel you could have spent staying in service. Fuel you could have spent making money. You must, in effect, retire 3 months early to pay for your own burial. And historically, through the mid-2000s, only about 1/3 of operators actually pulled it off. The rest mistimed the fuel, or the satellite died unexpectedly, and the asset simply stranded itself in the active belt. A $400 million derelict in everyone's way forever. So your two outcomes are, you spend money you'll never recover to gently push your asset into a celestial junk drawer, or you fumble the timing and it becomes permanent debris with your name on the registration. Now, after all that, a reasonable person is entitled to one question. Does the thing make any money at all? And here, brace yourself. The answer is actually yes. This is the part of the video where I have to be fair to the asset, and I want it on record that I don't enjoy it. Because a satellite is, underneath everything, a landlord. You don't sell it. You rent it out in strips. Those transponders, the channels bolted to the side of the spacecraft, you lease them one at a time to whoever needs to move a signal across a continent. Television networks, phone companies, internet providers reaching the places the cables never bothered with. Militaries, who pay the most and ask the least. The going rate for a single transponder has historically run around $2 million a year, and a large satellite carries dozens of them. Fill a big one completely, 40 transponders, all leased, and you're looking at gross revenue north of $80 million a year against a machine depreciating $26.7 million. On paper, that isn't a loss. On paper, that's a business. Some of these operators historically ran margins north of 70% once the satellite was up and working, which on this channel is very close to heresy. So why isn't everyone doing it? Sit down. First, you only get paid for the strips you actually rent. An empty transponder earns nothing and still depreciates on schedule, still burns fuel to hold its slot, still costs you insurance. Capacity. You can't lease isn't an asset. It's weight you paid to lift. Second, the rent is falling every year because there is more capacity going up than there is demand to fill it. And when supply outruns demand, price does the one thing price reliably does. The $2 million transponder quietly becomes a $1.5 million transponder, then a please just sign something transponder. Third, and this is the one rewriting the entire industry, somebody put 10,000 smaller, cheaper boxes in a much lower orbit, and they're undercutting you on the exact customers who used to have nowhere else to go. Your most reliable money was television, beamed down to satellite dishes. That business is shrinking while you watch it, because the people who needed a dish now have fiber, or a streaming app, or a competitor's constellation flashing overhead every 90 minutes. So yes, it can make money, real money. In a good decade, with a full manifest and firm prices, it can earn back what you spent and then some. It is, and I cannot believe I am saying this on this channel, the closest thing to a functional investment we have ever put on these books. It just does it on a fixed tank of fuel, against a depreciation clock that never stops, in a market where the rent falls and the competition climbs, 22,000 miles from anyone who could change the plan. A business with its expiration date stamped on from the factory. A melting asset that happens to bill quarterly. Which is, if you think about it long enough, the most honest kind of business there is. Let's close the books. Acquisition cost, $400 million. Resale market, none. Salvage value, none. You cannot recover, return, or reach the asset. Realizable value at end of life, 0. And you had to pay extra to get it to 0 responsibly. What you actually purchased here today was not a satellite. It was a 15-year subscription to watching $400 million depreciate in a straight line at $50 a minute, 22,000 miles above the nearest person who could help you, burning its last fuel to bury itself in a graveyard you will never visit. And the worst part, the part that should keep you up at night, it's still one of the better purchases on this channel. That's the lesson. As always, this has been the opposite of financial advice, presented for educational and recreational losses only. Astronomical ambitions, astronomical losses. We'll see you in the next one.